Hello, every pony. DoctorBrony here, and I've got a special treat for you today. I'm going to be reading a fanfic that was suggested to me on the FimFiction IRC. And, well, I read through it, and I think you'll like it. Well, without further ado, Why Didn't I Stay on the Farm? By FanNotANerd. The apple tree trembled as the stallion's hooves slammed into the trunk, sending most of the ripe apples on the tree into the baskets strategically placed around the base. Big Macintosh turned and frowned at the few apples stubbornly remaining. They were ripe, no question about it, bright red and hanging heavily on the branches. The stallion turned and bucked again, putting some extra power into it. He was rewarded by a series of thumps as the apples fell. He turned back to the tree, satisfied with the smile on his face, which immediately faded as the tree crashed onto the ground, trunk smashed by his overpowered kick. The stallion stared at the shattered stump for a moment, eyes wide in shock. His customary wheat stalk dangled comically out of the corner of his mouth. "Big Macintosh, what was that?" The stallion snapped himself out of his shock and started pulling the fallen tree to the side. "Nothing, sis," he called back, straining to move the tree from where it lay. "You sure? I could have sworn that was a fallen tree." "Come on," the stallion thought, pushing the tree again. His Herculean effort succeeded in shifting it a couple of centimeters. Applejack walked in the clearing and stopped, watching her brother try to push a shattered tree out of sight. She sighed. "For real, Mac? That's the 5th time this week." Big Macintosh abandoned his efforts sheepishly and faced the orange earth pony. "I know, they just don't make trees like they used to." "Looks to me like you just don't know your own strength," Applejack commented. The stallion glared at the tree. "I know my own strength. She was just too fragile." Applejack sighed, placing a hoof in her face. "Mac, I just don't know what to do with you." Big Macintosh shifted sheepishly, fully aware of the lucridity of the situation. Here he was, a good few years older than the pony in front of him, and he was getting lectured. "We've hit a new high, haven't we?" "Tell you what," Applejack said. "Leave the apple bucking to me. Go wander around town a little." Big Macintosh sighed in resignation. "Yep," he sighed glumly. Applejack nudged him teasingly. "Besides, Fluttershy's been eyeing you. Might be worth going after." The stallion blushed fiercely and fled, for no other reason than that to escape his sister's laughter. He slowed into a light trot a good distance from Sweet Apple Acres, forcing his blush to vanish. Mares were fine to chat with, but as soon as they started getting forward, Macintosh snorted to himself. Mares were too much trouble anyway. Couldn't they understand he was perfectly happy tending the apple fields with nothing more serious than Black Spot to worry about? He'd gone out with another mare once, nearly 3 years before. Cute unicorn by the name of Lyra. He considered it a personal triumph that he managed to put up with the migraine other ponies called a relationship for 4 full months before finally giving up. Nope. Mares were just too much trouble. The farm kept him busy in any case, as long as he kept. Something smacked him in the face. A moment later, it croaked in. Something smacked against his face. A moment later, it croaked in indignation, expecting to have landed somewhere a bit more boggy. "Oh dear, I'm sorry." Big Macintosh peeled the frog off of his face and looked upwards for the heavily laden Pegasus hovering above him. "Fluttershy, any reason you're carrying a basket of frogs?" The Pegasus landed beside him, putting the basket down. Croaks and chirps could easily be heard from inside. "Well," she said, "I originally brought these frogs from Froggy Bottom Bog, but now the bog's overpopulated, so I'm taking these ones back to the marsh." The stallion shrugged and deposited the frog she'd dropped back into the basket. "If I might ask," Fluttershy said, unconsciously hiding behind her mane, "why aren't you back at the farm? Isn't it apple buck season?" Macintosh looked away. "Well, I kinda misjudged my own strength, and kicked over a tree." Fluttershy gasped. "You kicked over a tree?" "I know," Big Macintosh said. "Applejack ain't happy about it." "That's not what I meant," the Pegasus said, backtracking. "I mean, that takes a lot of force, doesn't it? You must be really strong." The stallion shifted awkwardly. "Thanks for the compliment and all, but—" "I'm sure it comes from pulling plows all day," Fluttershy continued. "Don't you ever have time to relax?" Warning bells went off in the earth pony's brain. Something was off here. He recognized that tone and the subtle emphasis on relax. Fluttershy was flirting with him. Fluttershy, he said nervously, don't you think them frogs should be getting back to the swamp sometime soon? They can wait, Fluttershy said. Big Macintosh took a step back. This is all wrong. Fluttershy was supposed to be, well, shy, hence the name. Listen, he said before taking another step back. You what? Fluttershy breathed, moving right up close to him. Big Macintosh swallowed. Why were her wings standing up from her back? He didn't know a lot about Pegasus anatomy, but he knew enough to be genuinely perturbed by what he was seeing. Words failing him, the stallion turned tail and fled, crashing through the underbrush where the uncharacteristically forward Pegasus couldn't follow. When he was sure he was out of earshot, he slowed to a walk, letting out a deep sigh. Damn these ponies, he thought to himself. They drive me to drink. Fluttershy had never been that forward about anything. Usually, if he'd been the one to suggest spending some time together, she'd let out a frightened squeak, blush, and hide behind her mane. Now it seems that their positions were reversed. Must be in heat or something, he decided. All mares went a little rangy for a few weeks every year. Many of the more conservative ones, Fluttershy included, just made themselves scarce during the interval. Well, nothing to be done about it. The only thing he could do was try to avoid, "Oh, hey, Big Macintosh!" The stallion nearly jumped a meter into the air, letting out an uncharacteristic shriek. Once his hooves touched the ground again, he whirled around, glaring at the purple unicorn behind him. "Twilight, don't sneak up on me!" "Well, someone's high-strung," Twilight commented, walking closer. "What are you doing out here in the forest?" Big Macintosh indicated back the way he came. "Trying to get away from Fluttershy. She's, well..." "Oh," Twilight said, cheeks reddening. The stallion took a nervous glance behind him. "I just hope..." "There you are!" Big Macintosh yelped, glancing up where the canary Pegasus hovered over a gap in the trees. "I found you!" Fluttershy crowed, picking her way through the branches. The stallion let out a frightened neigh and crashed through the bushes again, heading in the general direction of Ponyville. "Big Macintosh!" Fluttershy called after him. "Wait!" This time, he didn't stop. He kept up the gallop all the way to Ponyville, despite the scratches stinging on his flanks from where he crashed through the patch of nettles. He glanced behind him, hoping Fluttershy hadn't deduced where he was going. He relaxed for a moment, seeing nothing in the sky. Wait. Oh, damn. The yellow dot was growing in the distance. Macintosh glanced around, looking for somewhere he could take cover. Rarity's Carousel Boutique beckoned immediately. The stallion burst inside, ignoring the closed sign on the door. "Rarity," he panted, "you gotta help me. Fluttershy's..." Only then did he notice the state of the room. Gems and scraps of fabric were strewn over every surface. This is a fairly common sight when the unicorn was buried in some project. This mess seemed different somehow. It wasn't the organized chaos he was accustomed to. This was just a mess. No order to it. Come to think of it, one thing was missing. Rarity. He took another step in. "Hello?" This ultimately turned out to be a mistake. "Mine!" snarled a voice from the back room. Big Macintosh jumped back, letting out his third surprise yelp of the day as a disheveled alabaster unicorn charged out from the back room. The stallion barely had time to register the severity of the situation before the unicorn slammed into him, knocking him on the ground. "Such a big, strong stallion," she whispered into his ear. "Oh, Celestia, not you too." He wasn't really sure how he was able to extricate himself without hurting the unicorn, or destroying half the shop in process. The point was, he did. Moments later, he planted his weight on the other side of the door, while the spurned unicorn pounded on the other side. "You can't get away that easily, you big hunk of a stallion!" "Please just go away. Please." At that moment, Twilight decided to appear in a flash of light. Big Macintosh sighed in relief. "Twilight, thanks Celestia. Quick, I need you to..." "You never let me finish what I was going to say," the unicorn said, grinning seductively. The earth pony shrank against the door. "Twilight, I don't want to hurt your feelings, but I don't want a relationship right now, and I think you..." "Don't pretend you don't like the attention," Twilight said, wrapping a thread of magic around his neck and tugging incessantly. Big Macintosh dug his hooves into the dirt, struggling to both resist the magic and continue to hold the door closed. For a small unicorn, Rarity certainly had a lot of energy. Macintosh! The stallion groaned, looking up. Fluttershy hovered above him, a sultry grin plastered on her face. "Hey, back off!" Twilight shouted. "He's mine!" "I saw him first," Fluttershy shot back. "Let me out!" Rarity howled from behind the door. Big Macintosh stared dumbly at the two ponies in front of him. A muscle under his right eye began to twitch. "There's only one way to settle it," Twilight said, glaring at the Pegasus who had alighted on the ground, her wings now too stiff to keep her aloft. "He'll just have to choose." She turned toward Rarity's boutique. "What'll it be?" Twilight frowned. "Macintosh?" Big Macintosh galloped down the streets as fast as his legs could carry him, panting in terror. Why didn't they take the hint? He didn't want a relationship. Why wouldn't they just leave him alone? They're in heat, that's why. All of them. All at once. Big Macintosh spat a few choice obscenities as he raced away. He had never been so glad in his entire life to not be a mare. To be driven into a hormone-fueled frenzy every year. It was no wonder every mare he met seemed imbalanced. A dark building to his right caught his attention. Without wasting any time, the stallion barreled inside, slamming the door behind him. Once inside, he finally relaxed. Finally, a moment of peace. Now if only he could figure out how to get back to the farm without anyone... Hey! In ordinary circumstances, the stallion would have jumped. With as nervous as afraid as they were, he screamed an octave entirely unbefitting for his gender and ran away from the voice, straight into a support pillar. In the few moments it took for the room to stop spinning, the mystery pony was already at his side. "Relax, Big Mac, it's me!" Big Mac looked up into Rainbow Dash's magenta eyes. "I swear, if you..." Dash laughed. "Relax, Mac, I'm not into that sort of thing, remember?" The stallion grimaced. "No, you're just into my sister." The Cyan Pegasus grinned at him. "Now I thought you were all over that." Big Macintosh shuddered, peeking out a crack. "What the hay's going on? Every pony's gone stark raving nuts." Dash sighed. "You really need to get out more. It's just that time of year." "What time?" Macintosh snarled. "Every pony I've met has gone into heat. What kind of time is that?" Rainbow Dash winced. "I guess it's just bad luck that you came to town today. You're usually at the farm this entire time, apple bucking. You'd have missed it all." "Missed what?" Macintosh pleaded. The Cyan Pegasus waggled her eyebrows. Macintosh paused. "You mean, this time every year, every mare..." "Now you've got it," Rainbow Dash said, clapping a hoof onto his yoke. "Every other stallion who doesn't want to get mobbed skips town this time of year. Something about late spring just..." She laughed nervously. "This year was a bit nasty. I mean, I had some trouble keeping myself under control. You're probably the only stallion who actually stuck around." Something suddenly occurred to the stallion. "What are you doing in here anyway?" Dash shrugged innocently. "Nothing, just happened to be here." Macintosh's eyes narrowed. Meanwhile, the Pegasus peeked through a hole in the wood, scanning the street. "Okay," she whispered. "All clear. You've got a clear shot to Sweet Apple Acres. Go there and wait for this to blow over." The stallion tossed his misgivings to the side. Hard to believe all of this was happening just because he kicked a tree too hard. "Go!" Dash hissed. "Before any pony shows up!" Macintosh pushed open the door. "Thanks, Rainbow. I owe you one." He looked forward and froze. Every single mare in Ponyville was standing there in front of him. Every single one. Even his ex-mare friend Lyra, staring at him with those doe eyes that irritated him to no end. "Here you go," Rainbow Dash announced. "The only stallion dumb enough to stay here. Go nuts!" The crowd of mares let out a deafening bellow of lust and charged at the terrified stallion. Big Macintosh had time for one horrified scream before he was enveloped by the crowd. Hooves began pawing at him from every direction, as every mare in the crowd tried to get him from themselves. "Please, Celestia, or whatever else is up there, get me out of this, I swear. I'll do anything you ask, just get me away from these crazy mares." Much to his alarm, a voice answered. "Anything?" "Yes," he thought back. "Anything." A violet flash enveloped him, spiriting him away to somewhere else. The crowd of frustrated mares collapsed in on itself and wildly began looking for the stallion. He was nowhere to be found. Big Macintosh reappeared in a building somewhere. Where he was really didn't matter, as long as away from the town's insane female population. After a moment, it occurred to him to look around. Stone walls, tapestries. His brow furrowed. Am I in a castle? His eyes widened as realization dawned. Oh no. Oh yes, Princess Luna replied, horn glowing as she bound him with a chain of magic. The stallion struggled against the bonds, but to no avail. You said you'd do anything, the alicorn said, moving closer. Remember? Big Macintosh sagged defeated. Fine, he moaned. I give up. Luna giggled. Oh, I have no intention of making this easy. No intention at all. After all. She leaned close and leered evilly at the stallion. I have 1,000 years to catch up on. The stallion's eyes widened in terror. Why didn't I just stick with Fluttershy? And that was Why Didn't I Stay on the Farm by FanNotANerd. If you have a suggestion for a fanfic that I should read, put it down in the comments below, and I'll take a look. Until next time, stay classy, every pony. Stay classy.